Well. Looks like now that everything's said and done, I think it's time we declassify a couple things. Let's start with the beginning of these reports. Now, since we've collected all of them. Secret Report 1. It is, as is common knowledge, all games in the UG take place under our supervision. However, this particular game is saddled with a nigh unbelievable set of extenuating circumstances, catching the attention of the higher plane. Thus, I shall be taking a more hands-on role this time, as detailed in this report. The core differences in this game are as follows. 1. Its role in the plans for Shibuya's destruction. 2. The composer's absence from the UG. 3. The resulting limitation to his players. And 4. The game being played by a proxy. The composer has informed me of two major points: that he plans to destroy the UG, but also that his final decision will hinge on the outcome of his game with the conductor. A provisional rule for this game requires the composer to vacate the underground. It is unprecedented that the composer to be absent during a game. I cannot predict what effect it may have. Furthermore, the composer must lower the frequency of his vibe to travel from the UG to the RG, inevitably curtailing his abilities. This makes investigating the conductor and his strategy incredibly difficult, as the composer is still the only one who knows who and what I am. It means lingering in the UG to author reports carries a lethal risk. The greatest randomizer in the current game is the use of a hand-picked proxy to compete against the conductor in the composer's stead. No information on this person exists at present. While the situation seems dire, I believe the key to getting ahead of all this is at hand. You see, time always builds upon the past. I've already located our key. It is a pin request from the conductor. Normally, the psych manifestations of pins are determined by one's imagination. Thus, by analyzing the pin, the user's imagination, or rather, their true intentions, are revealed. Unfortunately, this order came through the composer, but never came into contact with the conductor. Thus, I could not use it to determine the nature of his imagination. I too have lowered my vibe to tune into the UG, limiting my abilities. However, at this stage, realizing that this pin holds the key is sufficient. The possibility of forestalling the plans of the UG's destruction remains. Okay, setting some groundwork. As the game was set to end, I felt a sudden burst of soul. And its source, I found the composer's hand-picked proxy, one Neku Sakuraba. Let it be noted that once danger was past, the soul he expelled rapidly tapered off. I shall define soul as it exists in the UG later. For now, let it suffice to say that the energy he bears within him. His unstable soul is the result of a rift between his body and emotional mind. This discord can be traced to a few causes. 1. His dense and all-inclusive soul composition. 2. Emotional confusion inhibiting the unity of his emotional self and physical body. And 3. The exacerbation of his confusion by memory loss due to his entry fee. However, anyone possessing such diverse soul can become a formidable wielder of imagination. The composer was right to choose this boy. Shibuya's fate may well rest on how well he manages to stabilize his soul. To measure his stability, I gave him a harmonizer pin. It can only be used when he cooperates with his partner. Synchronizing with another hinges on his ability to first stabilize his own soul. Thus, successful use of the pin would indicate that he has made progress on that front. The further he's able to push his and his partner's psych resonance through fusion, the greater his own internal stability will have become. The progress of his soul merits close observation henceforth. Allow me to redefine the composer's role. As I continue to observe the game's progress, I have a clear view of the enormous effect of the composer's absence. A clear definition of his duties are key to understanding the extent of this disruption. The composer holds absolute authority over the underground. By authority, I mean the right to determine rules. He is the only one who can change the composition of the UG and sole creator of this Shibuya. The underground Shibuya is created and organized by the composer's rules, which pit players against Reapers in a struggle for survival. A new composer only arises when the previous one is defeated. The victor takes the victim's place. At this juncture, the new composer rewrites the rules of UG Shibuya. However, there being no composer at all is a different situation. It means the rules that make up the UG are invalid. In other words, without a composer, the underground collapses. However, the composer's absence is still a secret. At present, only 3 people know. The composer, himself, his opponent, the conductor, and the producer, me. The producer's role is that of guardian over the game. For observation purposes, he must sometimes descend from the higher plane to the underground. While the producer is natively an entity from the higher plane, he can adjust the frequency of his vibe to visit the UG and lower planes. Think of a radio. Going from station A to station UG simply requires tuning in to a different frequency. The producer has the power to contact any and all beings in the underground. However, he is strictly prohibited from revealing his identity in the UG. His existence endangers the stability of the rules and balance of the UG and RG. Thus, the producer's identity must stay a secret from the Reapers and players, not to mention those in the RG. He may freely contact only one person as the producer, and that is the composer, which made his chat with Pinky very dangerous. The UG exists as a separate plane where the composer can judge the worth of men. Within it are Reapers and human players. It is infeasible for the composer to judge all of humanity by himself, so a filtering system utilizing the Reapers was created. The Reapers game. Reapers act as a test, weeding out unfit players. Upon becoming a Reaper, one's physical body changes, gaining incredible strength and an extended lifespan. As Reaper and player alike progress through the game, engaging in imagination-driven combat, their soul is refined. Soul is abstract matter, revealed through our research into life and death, and a component in the makeup of the atmosphere, humans, will, thought, all phenomena. As Reapers execute the game, they undergo a process of evolution, from grunts to officers to the composer. However, Reapers that follow the ideal route are rare, and most are erased by players. Reaper or player, those erased within the game disperse the mind and spirit housed within their flesh in the form of soul. Thus, they are erased only from visible existence. Their soul persists in the UG until gathered and tied together according to a new code. This new code is essentially imagination. Given sufficient imagination, any form is possible, be it a pin or a Reaper. Variations in this code cause the soul to manifest in different forms. In other words, humans, Reapers, and Noise are all entities formed of soul. The only difference is their code. And what are Noise? Entities without conscious will, only the drive to multiply. Thus, they constantly thirst for soul, attacking players and possessing humans in the real ground. Soul is consumed by noise. Soul consumed by noise is destroyed, even if the noise is erased. Thus, possessed humans often exhibit a rush of euphoria immediately after the noise is removed. Though untested, the same would likely hold were a player or Reaper possessed. The real ground and underground are planes of existence. Other planes exist as well, the one inhabited solely by noise, for example, or our customary plane. The planes are stacked in parallel, though each exists at a different frequency vibe and in tune with its inhabitants. Observing a lower plane from a higher plane is simple. Actual transplanar contact, while possible, is highly complex. The vibes of adjacent planes are closer, making passage between them comparatively easier. More distant planes show greater differences in vibe frequencies, and thus communion becomes more difficult. The UG exists just above the RG, allowing those in the UG to observe the RG, but not vice versa. Noise exists on a special plane that straddles both RG and UG, enabling their interference in the affairs of both. When players come into contact with a noise, they are drawn into the noise plane, which is where combat starts. In other words, players are forcibly tuned into the noise plane. Conversely, there exists an even higher plane than the RG and UG. That is where I am from, the plane of the angels. As in the UG and RG, angels have created a web of social schema to guide their activities. The role of producer is just one cog in the angel machine. Angel vibes are extremely high frequency. Not even the composer can catch them all. In actuality, he can only pick up that of the producer. So you can see, interplanar contact is beset by difficulty, but certain modes do exist for its realization. One is that of modulator decal. Within its area of effect, players from the UG can visibly manifest in the RG and communicate with others there. Reapers and composer can down-tune their vibes at will. Near these decals, however, even their vibes will be forcibly adjusted to a lower frequency. Another mode, imprinting, requires no physical manifestation in the RG. Imprintees experience the conferred thoughts as bursts of inspiration. The reliability of the communiques thus depend upon the person receiving it. For example, successful communication with preoccupied people is unlikely. Furthermore, recipient interpretation of said inspiration colors the message, making imprinting unreliable at best. Reaper Creeper was created as a mode of popular communication between the planes. Modulating paralogos, printed on paper, allow for limited UG interaction with real ground objects. As those in the RG are unaware of players, they perceive the illusion of a coin moving by itself. Simple as that. I receive periodic communication from the composer. While we maintain contact, I am prohibited from providing him with information for risk of unbalancing the game. I am permitted only to respond to his commissions for certain items, and even then, I am only able to create and deliver said items. The composer has requested increased phone functionality for use of the next game. Today, the proxy's partner, one Shiki Misaki, freed herself from a defining value: envy. With this, the composer is convinced of the proxy's victory on the 7th day. His confidence arises because the proxy's intervention was indispensable in causing his partner's growth. It signals the proxy's departure from his obsessive self-actualization loop. Previously, even the composer was unsure of his proxy's capacity for growth. Normally, the composer possesses a certain degree of clairvoyant foresight. His current downturned state, however, limits his abilities, clouding this supratemporal vision. Though able to observe the UG in the real ground, he is otherwise saddled with limitations. For one, his outward appearance. He looks younger than he would at full vibe frequency within the UG. Fortunately, this prevents the Reapers from recognizing him as the composer. To begin with, the composer contacts Reapers only through the conductor, so most are unaware of what he looks like. Additionally, as the being in the underground with the highest vibe, some lesser Reapers are incapable of perceiving him. The effects of down-tuning occur when the composer's vibe and the RG's frequency are substantially different. For Reapers, the down-tuning necessary to exist in the RG is significantly less, and thus affects less prominent changes. That said, it depends on the Reaper. At any rate, the effect is minimal, making Reapers much more frequent visitors to the real ground. Provided they complete their duties, Reapers may do as they wish in the RG within certain accepted boundaries. Day 7. As the composer predicted, the proxy has won the game. So, what happens to those who survive the week? Those whose imagination is less than outstanding are broken down into soul, while those with excellent imagination become reapers. The most talented of these may travel to the next plane, inhabited by us angels. Diligent reapers, too, may pass through the office of composer to ascend to the plane of angels. Now, a what if? This may sound odd, but one may choose to be reincarnated. Well, the word reincarnated is not accurate, for the humans in the UG are not truly dead. They merely possess different soul code and have been tuned into a different plane. We angels do not consider it a loss if a talented player elects to return to the real ground, as their superior imagination will inspire other humans. Upon returning to life, the exceptional player's creative activities soon make their mark on society. His art, music, or other output become a part of culture, spreading and persisting through time, refining people's imagination even without personal contact with the player. Certainly this requires time, but no one has ever accused angels of being in a hurry. The composer's absence during this particular game, however, means reincarnation is not possible. Only the composer possesses the level of imagination necessary to reincarnate. It is beyond the conductor's means. The conductor continues to act as if the composer were present, but this farce can only continue for so long. I'll be watching with great curiosity to see how the conductor responds once his ruse unravels. As I was busy writing reports, the boy in my custody, Beat, went missing. Beat has expressed curiously on how noise was created. Perhaps he plans to be a reaper. But even without specific instructions from them, he has the ability now. I gave him a pin filled with special imagination required to create noise, and imprinted him with instructions for its use. This does not qualify as interference with the game. The information I gave him will have no impact on the game's results. It is merely a token of my esteem for his unflinching passion towards what he holds dear. Whether he uses this power and how is completely up to him. That's how. I thought Mr. H made it for him, but I guess not. Okay. And thus starts the interesting week. As predicted by the composer, his proxy has entered the game a second time. The proxy has proven his aptitude and will be joined in the next game by the composer himself as a new partner. There are 3 reasons behind the composer's choice of actions. 1. To ascertain the conductor's strategy. 2. To educate his proxy. And 3. To protect him. With his return to the UG, the limits on the composer's abilities will be relaxed. However, using his abilities could reveal his identity. As such, he will need to continue to limit himself for a while longer. This presents a certain set of risks. The greatest risk, however, lies with the composer joining the proxy for this game. The composer's presence, his tremendously high vibe, will place a great deal of physical and psychological strain on the proxy. Furthermore, the proxy's victory in the previous game had won him back his memory. The self-actualization loop binding the proxy is thus stronger than ever. More deeply ensconced even than the envy cleared from Shiki in the previous game. There is a possibility that the proxy's soul destabilizing, negating its progress during the previous game. Slight problems also persist with the proxy's personality. How long will the proxy be able to bear being side by side with the composer? I mean, they get off on the right foot instantly. Right? No? No. Today, an alert was handed down. A fallen angel. A fallen angel is one who had broken the angel's code. A criminal. Their crime? Revealing the secrets of Taboo Noise Refinery to the game master, Minamoto. Minamoto knows the composer's RG identity, secret even to the conductor, and has chased him to the real ground. The fallen angel may have supplied him with this information. Minamoto lusts to take the composer's place, and his potential to do so comes second only to that of the conductor. Despite being a complete outsider in the wager between composer and conductor, he stands to hinder the composer greatly. it is entirely possible Minamoto may rise to the office of conductor before this wager has been decided. All eyes from the higher plane are on this game for the future of Shibuya. Should its result be invalidated by outside interference, the Angels' disappointment would be vast. So, what is the Fallen Angels' goal? Dominion over the underground? Retribution against the Angels? Whatever the case, we must carefully monitor Minamoto's actions and stay vigilant against this fallen angel. I am finally able to hand over the phone tracking application the composer requested some time back. I informed the composer it was ready 3 days ago, but they apparently had no time to come pick it up. It just shows how carefully the proxy is planning each move. The application detects the conductor's imagination. With it, one can walk around Shibuya and piece together the conductor's strategy. At this point, even I cannot fathom the conductor's plan. I will have to rely on the information gathered by the composer. While I wait for his findings, I will work on the composer's next order, a second revision to the phone's functionality. Today also marks my first contact with the proxy since he formed a pact with the composer. He appears considerably wary of his partner at present time. As expected, the psychological strain is severe. So severe, in fact, that most players will be unable to continue. Right now, the only thing keeping the proxy in the game is his entry fee. At least his dangerously strained state of mind is acting to heighten his soul. I see no sign of relapse or destabilization. Rather, the return of his memory seems to have only yielded positives. I look forward to watching the proxy's continued growth. That explains why it was reacting to all the red pins. The composer's report indicate rough going of the investigation. I suspect the limits upon his abilities. Meanwhile, Minamoto has not issued any missions. The Reaper elites must have been alarmed as well. Perhaps this is more of the Fallen Angel's influence. As I've stated, Minamoto is suspected of a liaison with the Fallen Angel. The Fallen Angel may have chosen Minamoto for a few reasons. First, none desired the composer's office more. Minamoto's obsession was great enough to compel him to pursue the composer into the real ground. Unlike simple Reapers, however, the composer's power are not lost in the RG. I can just imagine the shock dawning on Minamoto's face as I write this. Yes, the composer must down-tune to the frequency of the real ground, limiting his power. However, Minamoto is in the same boat. As a result, the difference in their abilities remain unchanged. Thus, the assassination attempt failed. While Minamoto's efforts were fruitless, they serve as ample proof of his convictions. The second reason the Fallen Angels may have targeted him is his lack of loyalty to the Reaper's organization and his preference for solo action. His distaste for cooperation meant little chance for him revealing the Fallen Angel's presence. The third reason is his constantly unconventional aesthetic. His bizarre actions regularly cause confusion among those around him. Even if the Fallen Angel were to urge him to do something out of the ordinary, that'd be ordinary for him. Nobody would suspect a thing. That is why he is the ideal target of a Fallen Angel to work his agenda without raising suspicion. At least, it seems a logical conclusion. The question now is, why has Minamoto abandoned the game and what is he doing? I suspect that his only current objective is to take out the composer. If so, he is likely preparing on the 7th day for his opportunity to confront the players. Just what did the Fallen Angel tell Minamoto? Perhaps no one will ever know. It'd be great if we could find out, though. The proxy feels an affection for the art of the designer Cat, myself. As he was picked by the composer, this is hardly a coincidence. It was an inevitability. Cat's creative works are embedded with command codes. His art acts as a medium for mass imprinting. The imprinting players use only work on an individual basis. However, through art, one can affect anyone who comes into contact with the work. I imbue my art with 2 special command codes. The first is enjoy the moment more. This strengthens the imagination. The proxy received this signal loud and clear, though past trauma precluded him from responding accordingly. Trauma. The second code, gather, calls to those with strong imaginations. Hence the inevitability. Why wouldn't the composer find his worthy proxy standing in front of my graffiti? A single reason exists for rigging my art in this way. The creation of the future requires imagination. My art is widely accepted in Shibuya. This proves that those with imaginations sufficient to create the future are gathering in the area. Shibuya's future is looking very bright. Very good. I have finished revision 2 of the phone tracking app, which allows it to detect the Shibuya River. The composer aims to use this device to convey the river's location to the proxy. Before passing that knowledge along, the composer needed to understand the conductor's plan. As of yesterday, he felt confident in his hypothesis. The composer had encountered red skull pins everywhere the detector would lead. The same pins I created on the conductor's behest on the first day. As I suspected, they form a prime piece of his strategy. The imagination he has filled in those pins is the same as the player pin, imprinting. They are set apart, however, by a single major difference. Red skull pins are made to imprint targets with the conductor's will. Anyone wearing the red skull pin is dominated by the conductor's mind. The further the pins spread, the more people he controls. However, the red skull pins have penetrated less than half of Shibuya's real ground population in the last 2 weeks. At this rate, the conductor's strategy will end in failure. How does he intend to penetrate the rest of Shibuya? I'll be monitoring his action closely. The final day came for the conductor. Eliminate Minamoto. The final mission came from the conductor. Eliminate Minamoto. Unexpected as it was, tension ran high, but the composer's quick thinking saved the day. In the end, all went according to plan, and he successfully guided the proxy on to the next game. His solution entailed first, defeating Minamoto, thereby ensuring the proxy's victory. Second, the composer pretended to be erased by Minamoto while shielding the proxy. To accomplish this, he fled to a parallel world just before Minamoto's final attack connected. The proxy survived the game alone, but was again unable to elect reincarnation, due to the composer's illegal participation in the game. For better or worse, the game between the composer and conductor concludes in 1 week's time. The conductor's strategy may end in failure, but we will see. I need to keep a close eye on his future actions. All I can do is wait for the composer to inform me of which parallel world he escaped to. And thus begins week 3. I have begun patrolling Shibuya in pursuit of the conductor's strategy. While in Uegawa, I spotted Minamoto's taboo noise refinery sigil. Several types of these sigils exist in various categories which we of the higher plane have classified. Not all of them, however, will work in the UG. Its vibe frequency is simply too low for them to translate properly. The sigil Minamoto drew was one of those undecodable types. Was that a mistake of the fallen angel's part? Or was it a transcription error by Minamoto? Either way, with that design, he stands little chance of reviving himself. However, Minamoto is driven, and his imagination strong. Perhaps strong enough to make a taboo sigil work even within the underground. If so, the specific result would be impossible to predict. Anything that might interfere with the composer or conductor's wager is to be avoided at all cost. I will personally neutralize Minamoto's sigil. Angels may not interfere with the Reaper's game, but this contest will decide Shibuya's future. The higher plane cannot idly stand by. Meanwhile, the conductor has dealt a preemptive blow. The starting player count in this final game is 1. I cannot be certain whether the conductor knows that Neku Sakuraba is the proxy, but this severe restriction to the number of entrants ensures player erasure. In this flagrant abuse of his privilege, he has eliminated the threat of the proxy. With the composer in a parallel world, the proxy's position is perilous. Still, as producer, I am bound to the rules. I can offer him no help. All I can do is guide him to the Shibuya River. Call it luck or fate, even by himself the proxy managed to form a pact. He had partnered with Beat, now a Reaper, who is himself fixated on reaching the river. As such, guiding the proxy will require a little work on my part. Still, I haven't uncovered the conductor's strategy for this final week. I can't afford to relax quite yet. So this is just completely off the walls. The conductor had used Beat's betrayal as an excuse to issue an emergency call. With it, the composer's rules in the UG are essentially suspended. After weeks of concealing the composer's absence, the conductor finally has absolute authority. At the same time, he's made red skull pins mandatory for all Reapers. Now, most of Shibuya has the red skull pin. The stage has been set for the conductor's counterattack. Furthermore, he cordoned off each area of the UG with walls. I could leave the UG, elevate my vibe, and pass through them quite easily. But to what end? I'm bound to the UG, and thus my hands are tied. I cannot reach the composer, nor do I know in which parallel world he's hiding. For now, all I could do is use my second sight and watch the game's progress. Rather than head to the Shibuya River, the proxy had begun wandering the streets, apparently in pursuit of the Game Master. Kanishi, this round's Game Master, seems mainly interested in saving her own skin. She appears a loyal follower of the conductor, but the appearance of a promising candidate for composer would quickly change her tune. At this point, she had been working hard to recover the conductor's trust after her slip on the first day. She has issued a single 6-day mission, one that exploits Beat's the greatest weakness: rhyme. Her plan is to panic the pair into committing some fatal error while keeping watch of her front row seat within Beat's shadow. This serves both to restore her standing of the conductor and to avenge the blow to her pride. Beat's greatest desire is to bring her back to life. Even if revived though, Rhyme still lost the game. Her entry fee is non-refundable. I do not know what the girl's entry fee was, but a life without it, the thing she held most dear, would be filled with grief and hardship. But is the void in one's heart caused by loss never filled? I think it can be. It may take some time, but something else will come along to fill that empty space, so long as one enjoys the present. In other words, we needn't mourn the loss of that which we hold dear. If only more people realize this. The composer did not impose the entry fee upon players to cause them anguish. In experiencing life without the thing one values most, players are forced to re-examine just how crucial these things really are. The hope is that by the close of the game, players will be able to take a hard look at themselves and be able to take a future with a new outlook on life. The entry fee exists to force players to see the truth about themselves. It is a test posed by the composer to spur players' self-enlightenment. So I think Rhyme will be fine. It'll just take some time. The conductor has begun his work with the red skull pins. By bringing Shibuya's collective consciousness in line with his own, he hopes to accomplish his goal of rebuilding Shibuya. The conductor's zeal is unparalleled among Reapers. His strong presence was central in the composer's ability to govern Shibuya, an area considered exceptionally chaotic, even among the higher planes denizens. That the composer would consent to base his plans for Shibuya's destruction on a game with the conductor shows his unwavering trust in his subordinate. The unification of minds in a natural state of a higher plane. Given time, it might not happen for the other ground. The current UG, however, is not ready. People have erected walls around their mind, dividing their collective consciousness. They coexist independently, like the cells that make up a single human being. While the player pin holds imagination strong enough to pass through those walls, the pin's owner's own barrier is strengthened. Were that not the case, the incoming flood of their minds would erode at their owner's own consciousness. Consequently, those who hold player pins cannot be scanned. Why does individuality exist? This is something the conductor has overlooked. Everything that exists has a purpose. Obsessed with this egoistic protection of Shibuya, the conductor had blinded himself to the facts. With his blind ego funneled into everyone in Shibuya, the city's destruction is not far off. So long as there is individuality, it's impossible to fully eliminate loneliness. There's no such thing as a shared reality. Even people who believe they share a connection are not truly connected. They must actually make contact, clash, and learn about others through their foreignness. Differences should not be denied. They should be accepted and enjoyed. People must realize this if Shibuya is to be spared from destruction. Let's hope they do it in time. I detected an energy spike. It would seem Minamoto's returned. I judged his revival unlikely after spotting his taboo refinery sigil on the first day, but it appears Minamoto's imagination was much stronger than I'd anticipated. The fallen angel must have completed the array for him. A troubling thought. Who can say what impact this will have on the composer and conductor's game? Minamoto only has one goal now: to find the composer and erase him. Minamoto has been tracking the composer's movements. He must know that the composer frequents this cafe. Chances are, he'll pay a visit himself. As for the composer, I've yet to receive any word from him. Could the composer's abilities now be so limited he cannot even reach me? I may need to contact myself in the parallel worlds to help search for him. Let me expand on the concept of parallel worlds. In life, reality is made up of a continuous string of choices, and the consequences of those choices. Every time a choice is made, the option not selected branches off and exists in its own reality, a parallel world. Countless numbers of such parallel worlds exist within a single plane, be it the UG or RG, and travel among them is possible through the use of imagination. Theoretically, anyone can jump to a parallel world, but penetrating the membrane between worlds requires up-tuning one's vibe. This limits the pool of beings able to make the trip. Additionally, stress caused by breaking through the barrier can pull down the traveler's base vibe. If the vibe dips, the frequency may be too low to pass through the barrier. In worst cases, it may render the traveler unable to return to his or her original own world. Conversely, angels are beings meant to jump between worlds. Thus, such travel is a simple matter. Angels have a higher base vibe than the frequency of the underground, allowing them to leave the UG, then tune their vibe up to that of the desired parallel world. And thus they have no problem. I have located the composer. He is in a world where Tin Pin Slammer of all things reigns supreme. I'm off to retrieve him. Minamoto has definitely targeted this shop, and not with friendly intentions. It is essential that I leave here immediately. I'll leave the key pin to the Shibuya River for the proxy. He should know what to do from there. Shibuya's fate had been placed in the proxy's hand. It is no longer safe for me in the UG. My work here is done. All that remains is to retrieve the composer from the parallel world and bring him back to this one. Alright, easy enough. Right. Secret Report 22? That's not right. Should be this one. Secret Report 21. There it is. I entered the parallel world and contacted the composer. Unexpectedly, he seemed to be enjoying his stay. In fact, the reason he'd not contacted me was because he was too busy playing Tin Pin. I made him promise to meet me at the Shibuya River. In the meantime, I need to hide out, so as to not meet myself in this world. Usually, angels existing in multiple entities within the same world poses little problems. However, mine is a somewhat special case. You see, I am the fallen angel who taught Minamoto how to refine the taboo noise. Minamoto owes his successful rebirth to the corrections I made to his flawed taboo refinery sigil. I must hide in Pork City for fear that my alternate self in this world may report me on sight. Minamoto is my backup plan to ensure Shibuya's survival. If the composer does not change his mind, this unique city will be lost. I must prevent that at any cost. Thus, I deemed it necessary to cross the boundaries angels usually respect. I happily accept the stigma of fallen angel for this cause. Well then, it's about time to meet him. After calling the composer and hearing his cheery voice, I feel as if my shadow falls even darker. But darkness has always been husband to light. I sincerely hope that someday my sins will be judged justified. I still hold faith that they will, now and forevermore. One last thing. To the composer's pick, Neku Sakuraba. The future you must choose is within you. I'm glad to have a chance to meet you. Now then. The composer defeated the conductor. The composer defeated the proxy. However, he has stayed his decision to destroy Shibuya. It seems the course of the game has brought about a change of heart in the composer. Yes, Shibuya persists, but it is no longer the same city as it was a month ago. Instead, a completely new Shibuya has risen. And the composer has changed, so Shibuya itself has metamorphosed. 1 month previous, Shibuya was plagued with problems, dire enough to motivate the composer to destroy it. Today, Shibuya has shifted into what we angels believe to be the optimal parallel world. To complete the puzzle, all the pieces had to be set in place. And even if one was incorrect, the entire picture would be ruined. Rhyme's selfless display of kindness, Higashizawa's bottomless career ambitions, Konishi's heart of stone, the conductor's wild actions born from overflowing love. All of these were necessary if Shibuya was to be born anew. There are no extra pieces, no irrelevant components. Accept society as an ever-changing thing, and your mind will become flexible. Individuals will link together and enact change throughout society. This is the only way to weather, no, to ride high upon the waves of the ever-changing world. It was no coincidence the composer opted for this simple method in the end. My gratitude goes out to you all. I'll greatly look forward to what this new Shibuya will become. Thank you. But that's not where this ends. Back in 2007, 2011, that would be the end of this. However, a new day has dawned, which I've never read before. Secret Addendum. Thanks to the composer's change of heart, brought on by exposure to the proxy's unbridled imagination, Shibuya had been restored to its original state. Crisis averted. Although the rules have undergone some slight revisions in the wake of Shibuya's rebirth, the powers that be deemed no major changes were necessary, saying it's better to keep things easy to understand. For now, it seems the game will remain the same. The composer will continue to use it as a tool for which he can judge the worth of visitors from the RG. In other words, everything's back to normal. Well, in Shibuya, at least. The incident outside the city has piqued the composer's interest, and rightfully so. Neither one of us had seen it happen so close to home. 2 boys I know quite well seem to have vanished from the RG a few hours ago. What's more is that I've detected several spikes in activity over the past few days during regularly scheduled retunings. While I've yet to find an explanation for the unexpected trouble that has accompanied noise outbreaks and interplanar travel as of late, I can't help but think it must be connected to those boys' sudden disappearance. For now, I've decided to investigate a certain noise that made some major waves as it appeared. Something about it strikes me as suspicious. Although I have no evidence definitively tying the emergence of this noise to the aforementioned incident, my intuition tells me the former was somehow caused by the latter. We'll see how I turn up when I check out the scene. Speaking of which, it looks like the composer is making moves of his own. We haven't coordinated our efforts, but I've got a hunch we're headed to the same direction. It turns out the enormous noise under the Little Reaper's control was actually a pseudo-parallel world, artificially constructed by breaking down and forcibly rebinding the soul from various noise. This sort of unusual and unstable dimension is extremely fragile, so we give up on the idea of down-tuning our vibes to launch an infiltration. Instead, I interfere with the noise from the outside by using an advanced method of imprinting. My goal was to save both boys. Unfortunately, I could only save one. A pseudo-parallel world like that is special, in that it is heavily dependent on its creator. A considerable imagination is required to create such a world, far greater than that of any run-of-the-mill Reaper. I suspect someone must have given that little girl a hand. And what about those mysterious visions that invaded Neku's consciousness? What about the abnormal power in whoever created it? What about the Reaper resummoned in the UG via a refinery sigil? All these phenomena occurred almost simultaneously with the aforementioned incident in Shinjuku. That is, the inversion. But is it possible a single event could truly have such widespread repercussions? I'm determined to find out. Well, that's all of them. Hope you enjoyed your time here. I'll see you around next time. Next playthrough. May your heart be your guiding key.